I'm Xenia, 29 years old, and I thought my marriage was solid. I trusted my husband, completely believed in us and our future together. But one Saturday afternoon, a single belt found in my car turned my entire world upside down. My husband accused me of infidelity, screamed at me in front of his family, called me a liar and a cheat. What he didn't know was that the belt would lead me to discover the most disturbing secret his family was hiding. Before I tell you what happened next, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop a comment below. Hit that like button and subscribe, because what I discovered and what I did next shattered an entire family's darkest secret. My life in Austin, Texas was comfortable and predictable. I worked as an accountant for a mid-sized manufacturing company, crunching numbers and preparing financial statements. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid well and I was good at it. Trevor, my husband of 4 years, worked in real estate, showing houses and closing deals with the kind of charm that made him successful. We'd met through mutual friends at a backyard barbecue 6 years ago. He'd walked up to me, holding 2 beers, offered me one with that easy smile of his, and we'd talked until the sun went down. Our courtship was simple and sweet. He took me to nice restaurants, remembered small details about things I'd mentioned in passing, sent flowers to my office for no reason at all. When he proposed 2 years into our relationship, kneeling in the same backyard where we'd met, I said yes without hesitation. Our wedding was small but beautiful, held in a historic venue downtown with exposed brick walls and string lights. His mother, Diane, had helped me plan everything, spending hours with me, looking at flower arrangements and tasting cakes. She treated me like the daughter she'd never had, warm and welcoming in a way my own mother had never been. His father had passed away 6 years before I met Trevor, a heart attack that had devastated the family. Diane had been widowed at 47, left to raise 2 grown sons who still needed their mother in different ways. She lived alone in a large colonial-style house about 15 minutes from our place, the same house where Trevor and his brother had grown up. Aaron, Trevor's older brother, was 30 years old and worked in construction management. He'd moved back in with Diane after their father died, claiming she needed someone around to help with the house to keep her company. He was friendly enough, always cracking jokes at family dinners, offering to help Trevor and me with home repairs. The 4 of us spent a lot of time together in those first few years. Sunday dinners at Diane's house were a regular thing, sitting around her big dining table, eating pot roast and discussing our weeks. Holiday celebrations, birthday parties, random weeknight visits. I felt lucky to have married into such a close family, especially since my own parents had divorced when I was young and I'd grown up watching them become strangers to each other. Trevor and I bought a modest 3-bedroom house in the suburbs, a cookie-cutter place with beige siding and a small yard. We talked about having kids eventually, but both of us wanted to focus on our careers first, build up our savings, travel a bit. Life felt stable, secure, like we were building something that would last. I loved coming home to him at the end of the day, cooking dinner together, watching movies on the couch with our feet tangled up. He was affectionate, attentive, the kind of husband who still kissed me goodbye every morning before work. But around 6 months ago, things started to shift. Subtle at first, easy to dismiss. Trevor became more interested in my schedule, asking detailed questions about where I'd been, who I'd talked to at work, why I was 10 minutes late getting home. I thought maybe he was just stressed about a big sale that had fallen through. So I answered patiently, tried to be understanding. Then he started checking my phone. Not obviously at first. He'd pick it up while I was in the shower, claiming he needed to check the time or look something up. But I'd noticed my apps were open in different places than I'd left them, my messages pulled up when I knew I'd closed them. His trips to his mother's house became more frequent. 2 or 3 times a week, he'd head over there after work, sometimes staying until 10 or 11 at night. "He needs me," he'd say when I asked why he was going so often. "She's lonely. Erin works late a lot. I can't leave her alone in that big house." It seemed reasonable, even admirable. What kind of wife would I be to resent him spending time with his widowed mother? So I didn't complain. I spent those evenings alone, catching up on work, or meeting friends for dinner, telling myself it was healthy for us to have some independence. My relationship with Diane had cooled too. She'd stopped calling me to chat or inviting me over for coffee. When we did see each other at family dinners, she was polite but distant, like I was an acquaintance rather than a daughter-in-law she'd once baked birthday cakes for. Aaron had become weird around me too, avoiding eye contact, cutting conversations short. I couldn't figure out what I'd done wrong. Had I offended them somehow? Said something inappropriate? I replayed every interaction in my mind, searching for the moment things had changed, but I couldn't pinpoint it. The warmth had just gradually drained away, replaced by a chilly politeness that made me feel like an outsider. It was a Saturday morning in early October when everything exploded. I'd gone to the grocery store to stock up for the week, pushing my cart through the bright aisles, picking out vegetables and checking items off my list. The weather was perfect, that crisp fall air that made everything feel fresh and possible. I loaded the bags into the trunk of my Honda Civic, drove home with the windows down, singing along to the radio. When I pulled into our garage, I grabbed the first few bags and headed inside. Trevor was in his home office, door closed, probably on a call with a client. I made a second trip to the car for the rest of the groceries. That's when I saw it. A black leather belt lying on the floor of the back seat. I stopped, bags in hand, staring at it. It definitely wasn't Trevor's. He had 3 belts, all of which I'd seen hanging in our closet that morning. This one was different, Kenneth Cole brand, with a distinctive silver buckle. I set the groceries down and picked it up, turning it over in my hands. How had it gotten there? I tried to remember the last few days. Had I given anyone a ride? Let someone borrow my car? Nothing came to mind. I brought it inside thinking maybe Trevor had bought a new belt and forgotten it in my car for some reason. He was in the kitchen now, pouring himself coffee, still in his pajama pants and a t-shirt. When he saw me holding the belt, his whole body went rigid. His face, which had been relaxed and open, shut down completely. "Where did you get that?" His voice was cold, sharp, nothing like his usual tone with me. I told him I'd just found it in my car in the back seat. I asked if it was his, if maybe he'd left it there after we'd gone somewhere. But even as I said it, I knew it wasn't his. I knew all his clothes, his accessories. This wasn't his belt. The way Trevor looked at me in that moment, I'd never forget it. Like I was a stranger. Like I was something disgusting. "Whose belt is this, Xenia?" I repeated that I didn't know, that I'd just found it, that I was as confused as he was. But he didn't believe me. I could see it in his eyes, in the way his jaw clenched. "In your car." His voice dripped with sarcasm. How convenient. Just mysteriously appeared there. I felt my stomach drop. Was he actually accusing me of something? Of what exactly? I tried to laugh it off, told him he was being ridiculous. Maybe someone left it there by accident. Maybe it fell out of a gym bag or something. But Trevor wasn't laughing. He set his coffee down hard enough that it sloshed over the rim. "Don't lie to me. Just tell me the truth. Who have you been seeing?" I felt like I'd been slapped. "Seeing? I'm not seeing anyone." "Trevor, what are you talking about?" But he was already pulling out his phone, scrolling through something, his face getting darker. "I've suspected for weeks," he said. "The late nights at the office, the way you're always texting. Now this. Physical evidence." I stood there holding a stranger's belt, feeling my marriage crumble around me over something I couldn't even explain. I tried to reason with him. "Trevor, please. Think about this logically. If I was having an affair, why would I leave evidence in my car where you could find it? Why would I bring it inside and show it to you?" But logic wasn't reaching him. "Maybe you wanted to get caught," he shot back. "Maybe you're tired of pretending." His words were like bullets, each one hitting its mark. I felt tears starting to form, that hot pressure behind my eyes. "I've never cheated on you. I would never cheat on you. You know me." But he just shook his head, grabbed his keys, and headed for the door. "I'm going to my mom's," he said. "Don't call me." The door slammed behind him, and I stood alone in our kitchen, still holding that damn belt, trying to understand what had just happened. My hands were shaking. My whole body was shaking. 4 years of marriage, and he'd just accused me of infidelity over a belt I'd never seen before. No trust, no benefit of the doubt, just immediate judgment and condemnation. I sank down onto the floor, my back against the kitchen cabinets, and let myself cry. After a while, I pulled myself together enough to think. I looked at the belt again, really examined it. It was expensive, well-made, barely worn. The leather was soft, supple. Someone had taken care of it. I took photos of it from every angle, close-ups of the buckle and the brand label. Then I sent the pictures to a few close friends asking if anyone recognized it or if maybe they'd left it in my car somehow. 2 of them responded quickly saying they'd never seen it before. But my friend Jessica, who'd known me since college, called me instead of texting back. "That looks like Aaron's belt," she said when I answered. "I was at a barbecue at your in-laws' house last summer. Remember Aaron was wearing a belt just like that?" I stood up so fast I almost dropped the phone. "Aaron. You're sure?" She was pretty sure, said the buckle was distinctive. I thanked her and hung up, my mind racing. Aaron had been in my car. About a week ago, maybe 8 days, he'd called me in a panic. His truck had broken down on the highway and he needed a ride to the mechanic's shop. I'd been nearby running errands, so I'd picked him up and driven him across town. He'd sat in the back seat because the front passenger seat was full of bags from a shopping trip. Could he have taken off his belt in my car? Why would someone take off their belt in a car? But maybe it had slipped off, fallen from his pants when he got out. It was possible, barely. I tried calling Trevor, got sent straight to voicemail. I texted him explaining about Aaron, about giving him a ride, about how the belt must have fallen off. I waited for a response, watching those 3 dots appear and disappear for several minutes before finally getting a reply. "You're lying. You're covering. Just stop." My chest felt tight. He wasn't going to believe me. No matter what I said, no matter how much sense it made, he'd already decided I was guilty. That night Trevor didn't come home. I lay in our bed alone, staring at the ceiling, replaying everything. His paranoia over the past months, his constant questions, his suspicion. Why was he so ready to believe the worst of me? We'd built a life together. I'd never given him any reason to doubt me. So why was a single belt enough to condemn me in his mind? I finally fell asleep around 3 in the morning, exhausted from crying, from thinking, from trying to understand what was happening to my marriage. Sunday morning came gray and drizzly. I woke to find Trevor still hadn't come home. His side of the bed was cold, undisturbed. I checked my phone and found a text from him sent at 2 in the morning. "Staying at Mom's. Need time to think." I made coffee and sat at the kitchen table looking at that belt where I'd left it on the counter. It sat there like an accusation, like a bomb that had already gone off. I decided to call Aaron directly to ask him straight out if it was his belt. He needed to talk to Trevor to clear this up. I couldn't do it alone. Trevor wouldn't listen to me. Aaron's phone rang 4 times before he answered. His voice was rough, like he'd just woken up. "Zania. What's up? I didn't waste time with pleasantries. Did you leave your belt in my car last week when I gave you a ride?" There was a long pause on the other end, a pause that went on too long to be natural. "What belt?" he finally said, but his voice had changed. It was guarded now, careful. "The Kenneth Cole belt. Black leather. It was in my back seat." Another pause. "Oh, maybe. I don't know. I lose things all the time." His tone was all wrong. He sounded nervous, caught. "Why wouldn't you just say yes right away if it was yours? Why the hesitation?" "Aaron, I need you to tell Trevor it's your belt. He thinks I'm having an affair. He accused me yesterday and he won't believe me." Silence on the line. "Aaron," I prompted. "Look," he said slowly, "it's really not a big deal. Trevor is just stressed. He'll calm down." But that wasn't an answer. "Will you tell him I pressed? Will you explain that you left it in my car?" More silence. "Then I don't think it's my place to get involved in your marriage issues. That's between you and Trevor." I felt anger flare hot in my chest. "You won't get involved. This is you being involved. Your belt is destroying my marriage, and you won't even confirm it's yours." Aaron sighed, sounding uncomfortable. "I gotta go, Xenia. I'm sure everything will work out." Then he hung up. I stared at my phone, disbelieving. Why would he refuse to help? Why wouldn't he just talk to his brother and clear this up? Unless there was a reason he couldn't admit the belt was his. Unless admitting it would lead to questions he didn't want to answer. I called Jessica needed someone rational to talk to. She came over within an hour bringing bagels and more coffee. We sat in my living room and I told her everything. About Trevor's accusations, about Aaron's weird reaction on the phone, about feeling like I was losing my mind. Jessica listened, her face growing more concerned as I talked. When I finished, she leaned forward, elbows on her knees. Zinnia, I'm going to say something and I need you to really hear me. When people are overly suspicious and accusatory about cheating, especially without real cause, sometimes it's because they're projecting. They're doing something wrong, so they assume you are too. The thought had crossed my mind in the small hours of the morning, but I'd pushed it away. Trevor wouldn't cheat on me. Would he? But Jessica had a point. His behavior over the past 6 months, the suspicion, the constant checking up on me, the anger over a belt. What if he was hiding something? What if this whole accusation was meant to put me on the defensive, to make me so busy defending myself that I didn't notice what he was doing? I thought about all those nights at his mother's house. Were they really spent with his mother? Or was that just a convenient excuse Jessica left around noon, making me promise to call if I needed anything? I spent the afternoon in a daze, unable to focus on anything. I tried to watch TV, tried to read, tried to do some work I'd brought home, but nothing held my attention. My phone sat next to me, silent. Trevor didn't call, didn't text. Evening came and the house felt too big, too quiet. I made myself eat something, barely tasting it. Then I did something I'd never done before. I started looking through Trevor's things. His home office first. Papers spread across his desk, contracts and property listings. His computer was password protected, but his file cabinet wasn't locked. I went through folders, not even sure what I was looking for. Bank statements showing nothing unusual. Client files boring and professional. Old tax returns. Nothing suspicious. Nothing that screamed affair or deception. I checked his dresser drawers, feeling guilty but unable to stop. Socks, underwear, t-shirts. All normal. His closet revealed nothing but clothes and shoes. If he was hiding something, it wasn't here in the house. That night he came home around 9. I heard his car in the driveway, the garage door opening. My heart started pounding. He walked in looking tired, his face drawn. "We need to talk," he said, not meeting my eyes. I stood up from the couch, tried to keep my voice steady. "Yes, we do." He sat down in the armchair across from me, putting physical distance between us. "I've been thinking," he started, "about our marriage, about whether this is working." My throat went dry. "Are you saying you want a divorce over a belt that isn't mine?" He finally looked at me and his eyes were cold. "It's not just the belt. It's everything. The way you've been distant. The way you're always on your phone." "I haven't been distant," I said, my voice rising. "You're the one who's been distant. You're the one spending every night at your mother's house. You're the one who stopped trusting me for no reason." He shook his head. "There's always a reason, Xenia. People don't just become suspicious out of nowhere." We argued in circles for an hour. Him accusing me, defending. Neither of us getting anywhere. Finally exhausted, I asked the question that had been burning in my mind all day. "Are you cheating on me, Trevor? Is that what this is really about?" His reaction told me everything. He didn't immediately deny it. He didn't look shocked or offended. He just looked away, his jaw working. "Oh my God," I whispered. "You are. You're actually cheating on me and you're trying to make me the villain." He stood up abruptly. "This conversation is over. I'm sleeping in the guest room." The next few days were torture. We moved around each other like ghosts, not speaking unless absolutely necessary. He left for work before I woke up and came home after I'd gone to bed. The tension in the house was suffocating. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep properly, couldn't focus at work. My boss asked if I was feeling okay, said I seemed distracted. I lied and said I had a bad cold, was just tired. Jessica called me every day to check in, offering to come over to help however she could. But what could anyone do? My marriage was falling apart over a belt that had mysteriously appeared in my car, and no one would tell me the truth about where it came from. Friday evening, 1 week after the belt appeared, Trevor came home and announced we were going to his mother's for dinner the next night. It wasn't a question, it was a statement. My mom wants to see us. Both of us. I wanted to refuse to say there was no way I was going to face Diane and Aaron after everything. But something in Trevor's tone made me agree. Fine, I said. We'll go. Maybe there with his family present, I could finally get some answers. Maybe Aaron would admit the belt was his. Maybe Diane would talk some sense into Trevor. Maybe this nightmare would end. Saturday evening arrived too quickly. I dressed carefully, choosing black pants and a simple cream sweater, wanting to look put together despite feeling like I was falling apart. Trevor wore jeans and a button-down, his face set in hard lines. We drove to his mother's house in silence, 10 miles that felt like 100. The colonial house looked the same as always, warm lights glowing in the windows, Diane's carefully maintained flower beds lining the walkway. But I felt like I was walking into enemy territory, my stomach churning with anxiety. Diane opened the door wearing a floral dress and her usual pearls. She hugged Trevor, holding him a little longer than normal, then turned to me with a tight smile. Zinnia, come in. Her tone was formal, cold. We followed her into the living room, where Aaron was already sitting nursing a beer. He glanced up at me and quickly looked away. The air felt thick with tension, with unspoken things. Dinner won't be ready for about 30 minutes, Diane announced. Trevor, come help me in the kitchen. She shot me a look that clearly said I wasn't invited, then disappeared with her son. I sat on the couch, Aaron still in his chair across the room, both of us avoiding eye contact. The silence stretched out, uncomfortable and heavy. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. Aaron, why won't you tell Trevor that belt is yours? He took a long drink of his beer, still not looking at me. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do. I gave you a ride last week and you left your belt in my car. Just admit it. Tell your brother the truth. He finally met my eyes, and what I saw there confused me. He looked anxious, almost frightened. Drop it, Zinnia. Just let it go. Before I could respond, Diane called us to the dining room. The table was set with her good china, a roasted chicken in the center, surrounded by vegetables and rolls. We sat down, Trevor and Diane on one side, Aaron and me on the other, like we were at a negotiation rather than a family dinner. Diane said grace, her voice clipped and formal. Then we began eating in near silence, just the sound of silverware on plates. The food tasted like sawdust in my mouth. I forced myself to eat to maintain some appearance of normalcy, but every bite was an effort. Diane finally broke the silence. Trevor tells me you've been having some marital problems. Her eyes were on me, accusing. I set down my fork carefully. We've had a misunderstanding, I said, keeping my voice even. About a belt that appeared in my car. A belt that I believe belongs to Aaron from when I gave him a ride last week. Aaron's head snapped up. Mom, he started, but Diane cut him off with a look. A belt. She repeated, her tone making it clear she didn't believe me. Yes. Trevor found it and assumed the worst, even though there's a perfectly logical explanation. Trevor spoke up, then his voice hard. The logical explanation is that you're lying. The words hung in the air, ugly and final. I felt something break inside me. After 4 years of marriage, this is what it had come to. Public accusations, his family ganging up on me, everyone assuming I was the villain in a story I didn't even understand. I stood up my chair, scraping loudly against the floor. I'm not doing this. I'm not sitting here being accused of something I didn't do. I looked at Aaron. Tell them. Tell them the belt is yours. He opened his mouth closed. It looked at his mother with an expression I couldn't read. He stammered. I don't remember. Diane reached over and patted his hand. It's okay, honey. We know the truth. We know what kind of person would leave a strange belt in her car and try to blame it on family. The implication was clear, insulting. My hands were shaking. You don't know anything, I said quietly. None of you know anything. Trevor stood up too, facing me across the table. Maybe you should leave, he said. Maybe this was a mistake. Fine, I said, grabbing my purse from where I'd left it on a side table. I'll leave. But this isn't over. I walked toward the front door, angry tears blurring my vision. But as I reached for the handle, I heard something that stopped me cold. It came from upstairs, a sound that didn't belong in this tense, angry atmosphere. A laugh, feminine and intimate, followed by a lower voice saying something I couldn't make out. I froze. Who else was here? Diane hadn't mentioned any other guests. The voices continued muffled but audible, coming from what I knew was Diane's bedroom. Two voices, close together, speaking in tones that made my skin prickle. I turned back to the dining room. Trevor and Diane and Aaron were all still there, frozen like they'd heard it too. Who's upstairs? I asked. No one answered. The laugh came again, breathy and warm. Diane's face had gone pale. Trevor looked confused. Aaron was staring at his mother with an expression of pure panic. Something was very, very wrong here. Against my better judgment, against every instinct telling me to just leave and never come back, I walked toward the stairs. Zinnia. Don't, Aaron said, standing up quickly. Please. But I was already climbing, taking the steps 2 at a time. The sounds got clearer as I reached the second floor. They were coming from Diane's room, the master bedroom at the end of the hall. The door was slightly open, light spilling out into the dim hallway. I could hear breathing now, heavy and rhythmic. Could hear the creak of bed springs. My brain was trying to make sense of it, trying to find a rational explanation that didn't exist. I pushed the door open wider and looked inside. What I saw in that moment changed everything I thought I knew about Trevor's family. Diane and Aaron, on the bed, together, in a way that no mother and son should ever be. Naked, intertwined, completely absorbed in each other. My brain short-circuited, refusing to process what my eyes were seeing. This couldn't be real. This had to be some kind of hallucination, some stress-induced breakdown. But it was real. Horribly, sickeningly real. Aaron's face buried in his mother's neck. Diane's hands in his hair. Both of them moving together in a rhythm that left no doubt about what they were doing. I must have made a sound, a gasp or a sob, because Aaron's head jerked up. His eyes met mine, and the color drained from his face. "Mom," he said urgently, and Diane's eyes flew open. She saw me standing there and screamed, scrambling to pull a sheet over herself. Aaron rolled away, grabbing for his clothes from the floor. "Get out," Diane shrieked. "Get out of my house." But I couldn't move. I was rooted to the spot, my mind trying desperately to reject what it had just witnessed. Behind me, I heard footsteps pounding up the stairs. Trevor appeared at my shoulder, drawn by his mother's scream. He looked past me into the room and froze. "What the he?" breathed, not finishing the sentence. His face went from confused to comprehending to horrified in the space of seconds. "Mom, Aaron." The question came out strangled, barely audible. Aaron was pulling on his pants, his hands shaking so badly he could barely work the zipper. Trevor, he started, but had no words to follow. What words could possibly explain this? I finally found my voice, though it came out as a whisper. "How long? How long has this been going on?" Diane had wrapped herself in the sheet, sitting up in bed, her face a mixture of shame and defiance. "Get out of my bedroom," she repeated. But there was no force behind it now. Trevor pushed past me into the room, his face contorted with disgust and disbelief. "You're sleeping with Mom," he said to Aaron, his voice rising to a shout. "You're sleeping with our mother." Aaron couldn't look at him, couldn't look at any of us. "Trevor, please." Diane tried, but he rounded on her. Don't you dare try to explain this." My hand was shaking as I pulled out my phone. I needed evidence. No one would believe this without proof. They'd think I was crazy making up horrible lies about my in-laws. My fingers fumbled with the camera, but I managed to start recording a video. The room, the bed, the rumpled sheets, Aaron still half-dressed, and Diane clutching the sheet around herself. "Put that away," Diane demanded, her voice sharp with panic. "Delete that right now." But I didn't. I filmed for maybe 30 seconds, capturing enough to prove what I'd seen, what Trevor had seen. Then I turned and walked out of the room down the stairs, my legs moving on autopilot while my brain struggled to process the nightmare. I made it to my car in the driveway and sat behind the wheel, shaking so hard my teeth chattered. The front door of the house burst open and Trevor stumbled out, bent over in the front yard, and vomited into Diane's hydrangea bushes. I sat there watching him, watching my husband retch and sob, and I felt nothing. Numbness had taken over a protective shell against the horror. Eventually, Trevor straightened up, wiped his mouth with the back of his hand, and looked at me through the car window. His face was streaked with tears, pale and shocked. I rolled down the window. "She's your mother," he said uselessly, stating the obvious. "He's your brother," I replied. Trevor shook his head like he could shake the images loose, make them disappear. "I can't," he whispered. "I just can't." He got in his own car and drove away without another word, tires squealing as he peeled out of the driveway. I sat there a few minutes longer watching the house. Diane appeared at an upstairs window looking down at me, her face barely visible behind the curtain. Then the light went out. The window went dark. I finally started my car and drove home, the video saved on my phone, evidence of a secret so twisted I still couldn't fully believe it was real. That night alone in our house, I sat on the couch and watched the video 3 times, each viewing hoping I'd see something different, that I'd realize I'd misunderstood. But there was no misunderstanding. The belt in my car suddenly made perfect sense. Aaron had been with Diane somewhere, maybe in her car, maybe in some hotel room, and his belt had somehow ended up in my vehicle when I'd given him that ride. Maybe it had fallen out of a bag. Maybe he'd been carrying it. Maybe he'd deliberately planted it there to create a distraction to make Trevor suspicious of me instead of them. The accusations, Trevor's sudden paranoia, his mother and brother turning cold toward me. They'd all been desperate to hide their secret, willing to destroy my marriage to keep it buried. The next morning, Sunday, Trevor still hadn't come home. I found a text from him sent at 4 a.m. "I'm staying at a hotel. Can't think. Can't process this." I wrote back, "We need to talk. About everything. About what they did to us." But he didn't respond. I spent the day in a fog, moving through the motions of living without really being present. Made coffee, took a shower, stared at walls. My phone sat next to me, that video burning a hole in my mind. What was I supposed to do with this information? Pretend I hadn't seen it? Impossible. Tell someone? Who would I tell? And what would that accomplish except spreading the horror around? By Monday morning, I'd made a decision. I couldn't just sit on this, couldn't let Trevor's family's depravity be swept under the rug while they'd tried to destroy my reputation. They'd wanted to paint me as an unfaithful wife to make Trevor think I was the problem in our marriage, all to cover up their own sickening relationship. They'd used me as a scapegoat, a convenient target to deflect attention from themselves. And they'd nearly succeeded. If I hadn't gone upstairs that night, if I hadn't followed those voices, Trevor would still believe I'd cheated on him. Our marriage would have ended with me as the villain in a story they'd written. I called in sick to work, something I rarely did, and spent the day thinking through my options. I could go to Trevor with the video, show him undeniable proof of what I'd witnessed. But would that fix anything? Would it erase the accusations he'd made, the way he'd been so ready to believe the worst of me? Or would he just be angry that I had the video, that I'd recorded his family's shame? I could show it to a therapist, use it as evidence of why our marriage had fallen apart through no fault of my own. But that felt weak, passive, like I was accepting the role of victim they'd tried to force on me. No. What I wanted was for them to face consequences. Real consequences. I wanted Trevor to see his family for what they really were. I wanted Aaron and Diane to feel the kind of humiliation they'd been so willing to inflict on me. I wanted justice. And then I remembered something. Diane's birthday was coming up in 2 weeks. She always threw a big party, invited tons of people, made it an event. Extended family, neighbors, friends from her various social clubs. She'd sent out invitations weeks ago, pretty cards with gold trim announcing her 53rd birthday celebration. A plan started forming in my mind. It was cruel. It was vengeful. But after what they'd done to me, after the way they'd tried to destroy my marriage and my reputation, I felt no guilt about what I was planning. They wanted to play games, fine. I'd play too. And I'd win. Trevor finally came home Tuesday evening. He looked terrible, like he hadn't slept since Saturday night. We sat in the living room, an ocean of space between us on the couch. "I don't know what to do," he said quietly. "I keep trying to process it, and I just can't. It's Mom. It's Aaron. How is that possible?" I wanted to feel sympathy for him, wanted to comfort him. But I was still too angry about the belt, about the accusations, about how quickly he turned on me. "They tried to make you think I was cheating," I said. "They used that belt as a weapon against our marriage to hide what they were doing." Trevor buried his face in his hands. I know, and I'm sorry. I should have believed you. I should have trusted you. But I was so convinced. They'd been, I don't know, feeding me suspicions for months. Little comments here and there about how you seemed different, how maybe you weren't happy. Mom would say things like she hoped our marriage was okay, that she'd noticed tension. Aaron would joke about how I'd better keep an eye on you. I realize now they were planting seeds, making me paranoid, so I'd be primed to believe the worst when they gave me a reason. The manipulation ran deeper than I'd realized. Diane and Aaron hadn't just reacted to the belt in my car. They'd been laying groundwork for months, slowly poisoning Trevor against me. Preparing the ground so that when the time came when they needed a distraction, he'd be ready to believe I'd betrayed him. It was calculated, methodical, and absolutely sickening. Do you think Trevor started, then stopped? Do you think they've been doing this since Dad died? 6 years. I felt bile rise in my throat. I don't know. I don't want to know. But Trevor couldn't let it go. All those nights I spent over there. Was I sleeping in the guest room while they were together? Was I just what cover for them? I told him about my plan for Diane's birthday party. I explained that I wanted to show the video there in front of everyone, wanted to expose them the way they'd tried to expose me. Trevor listened, his expression unreadable. He hesitated. That's pretty harsh, Xenia. They're still my family. I stared at him, incredulous. They tried to ruin our marriage. They accused me of having an affair to cover up their incest. And you're worried about being too harsh. He flinched at the word incest, like hearing it out loud made it more real. You're right, he said finally. You're absolutely right. Do it. Show everyone what they really are. The next 2 weeks passed in a strange limbo. Trevor and I existed in the house together, but barely spoke. He was processing his trauma. I was processing mine, and there was no energy left to work on our marriage. Diane called him several times. He ignored her calls. Aaron texted messages that started apologetic and became increasingly desperate. Trevor, please, we need to talk. It's not what you think. What other interpretation was there? Trevor deleted the messages without responding. We heard through a neighbor that Diane's party was still on, that she was proceeding as if nothing had happened. The audacity was breathtaking. I prepared carefully. I bought an HDMI cable that would connect my laptop to Diane's smart TV. I'd been to enough family gatherings there to know the living room setup, where the TV was, how the space was arranged. I transferred the video to my laptop, made sure it was in a format that would play without issues. I practiced the connection at home on our TV, timing how long it would take to hook everything up and start the playback. 15 seconds, maybe 20. Long enough for someone to try to stop me, but not long enough to succeed if I moved fast. Saturday arrived, Diane's birthday. Trevor and I got dressed in silence. He wore a dark suit. I wore a simple black dress. We looked like we were going to a funeral, which felt appropriate. The drive to Diane's house was tense. Are you sure about this? Trevor asked, as we pulled onto her street. Cars already lined the curb, guests arriving for the party. I'm sure, I said. They don't get to pretend this didn't happen. They don't get to act like they're a normal, respectable family after what they tried to do to us. Trevor nodded, gripping the steering wheel tight enough that his knuckles went white. We walked into the house carrying my laptop bag. Inside, the party was already in full swing. 20 or 25 people filled the living room and spilled into the dining room, where a catered spread was laid out. I recognized Trevor's aunt and uncle, several of Diane's friends from her book club, neighbors from up and down the street. Diane stood near the fireplace in a blue dress, holding court, accepting birthday wishes and compliments. She saw us enter and her smile faltered for just a second before she pasted it back on. Trevor. Xenia. I'm so glad you came. Her voice was bright, brittle. Aaron appeared from the kitchen carrying a tray of glasses. He nearly dropped it when he saw us. His eyes went from Trevor to me to the bag I was carrying, and I saw fear flash across his face. Mom, he said urgently, but Diane was already moving toward us, her smile fixed in place. Let me introduce you to some people, she said, reaching for Trevor's arm. Before anyone could react, I walked past her toward the TV mounted on the wall. Several people were standing near it chatting in small groups. Excuse me, I said politely, setting my laptop bag down on the coffee table. I need to use the TV for just a moment. Diane's voice rose behind me. Xenia, what are you doing? I ignored her, pulling out my laptop and the HDMI cable. Trevor had moved to stand between his mother and me, physically blocking her from getting closer. Trevor, what is this? She demanded. What's going on? He didn't answer her, just stood there with his arms crossed, his face like stone. I found the HDMI port on the TV, connected the cable, switched the input. The room was getting quieter as people noticed something unusual was happening. Aaron pushed through the crowd. Stop, he said loudly. Xenia, please don't do this. But I was already opening the video file, my finger hovering over the play button. I looked around the room at all the faces watching me with confusion and curiosity. Some of you have heard that Trevor and I have been having marital problems, I said, my voice carrying clearly. Trevor accused me of having an affair based on a belt that mysteriously appeared in my car. His family encouraged those accusations, fed his suspicions, tried to paint me as an unfaithful wife. I paused, letting that sink in. But that belt wasn't evidence of my affair. It was evidence of theirs. I hit play. The video filled the large screen in crystal clear quality. For the first few seconds, no one understood what they were seeing. Just a bedroom, a bed. Then the camera panned and showed Diane and Aaron, their bodies tangled together in ways that left no doubt about their relationship. Someone gasped. Someone else said, "Oh God." A woman near the back of the room made a retching sound and ran toward the bathroom. The room erupted in screams, shouts, people scrambling away from the screen like it was contaminated. Turn it off, Diane was shrieking, lunging toward the TV, but Trevor caught her arm, held her back. Let them see, he said, his voice flat and cold. Let everyone see what you really are. Aaron was backing toward the door, his face ashen, while people shouted questions at him. Is that real? Are you actually— Oh my God, that's your mother, Diane's sister, Trevor's aunt. Martha was staring at the screen with her mouth open, tears running down her face. How could you? She whispered. Diane, how could you? The video was only 2 minutes long, but it felt endless. Every second of it playing out in front of this crowd, undeniable evidence of something so taboo that several people were openly crying. When it finally ended, the screen going black, the room exploded in chaos. Voices overlapping, everyone talking at once. People gathering their things, heading for the door in a mass exodus, like the house was on fire. Diane's neighbor from 2 doors down stopped in front of her. I've known you for 15 years, the woman said, her voice shaking. I thought you were a good person. I thought you were someone I could trust. And all this time, her voice broke, and she left without finishing the sentence. One by one, the guests fled. Some shot accusatory looks at Diane and Aaron. Others just looked sickened, eager to escape. Trevor's Uncle Diane's late husband's brother approached Trevor and put a hand on his shoulder. I'm so sorry, son. I'm so sorry you had to find out this way. Then he too left, shaking his head in disbelief. Within 10 minutes, the house was empty except for the 5 of us. Me, Trevor, Diane, Aaron, and Martha, who'd collapsed into a chair, sobbing. Diane was crying now, mascara running down her face. You had no right, she said to me, her voice breaking. No right to humiliate us like that. I felt a cold fury settle over me. I had no right. You accused me of having an affair. You tried to destroy my marriage to cover up your sick relationship. You used me as a scapegoat. All I did was tell the truth. Aaron found his voice finally. We didn't mean for any of this to happen. It developed over time after Dad died. We were both grieving and lonely and I cut him off. I don't care about your justifications. I don't care how it started. What I care about is that you threw me under the bus to hide it. Trevor turned to his mother, his face twisted with pain and disgust. I came to your house almost every night for 6 months. Was I just cover? Was I just here so the neighbors wouldn't wonder why Aaron's truck was always in your driveway? Diane reached for him, but he stepped back. Don't touch me. Don't ever touch me again. He looked at Aaron. You're my brother. We're my brother. I don't even know what you are now. Aaron's face crumpled. Trevor, please. We can work through this. We can. Family, Trevor interrupted, spitting the word like it was poison. You want to talk about family? You destroyed it. Both of you destroyed it. Martha stood up, wiping her eyes. I'm taking Diane to my house. She can't stay here. Not after she gestured vaguely at the TV, the scene of the crime. Diane protested weakly, but Martha wasn't listening. Pack a bag. Now. We'll figure out the rest later. As they left, Diane looked back at me with pure hatred in her eyes. I hope you're satisfied, she said. I didn't respond. There was nothing to say. Aaron left too, slinking out without another word, getting into his truck and driving away. And then it was just Trevor and me standing in his mother's living room, surrounded by abandoned plates and half-drunk glasses of champagne. Trevor looked at me and said something I'd been half expecting, half dreading. I can't do this anymore. Our marriage. I can't, Xenia. Every time I look at you, I'm going to remember this night. Remember that video. Remember what my family did and what you did. You were right to expose them. They deserved it. But I can't be married to the person who showed that to everyone. I understand, I said quietly. And honestly, I don't want to be married to someone who was so quick to believe I'd betrayed him. Someone who trusted his mother and brother more than he trusted his wife. We stood there in silence, the wreckage of multiple relationships scattered around us. I pulled off my wedding ring and set it on the coffee table next to my laptop. Then I packed up my things and walked out, leaving Trevor in the empty house. I drove home, took off the black dress, and sat on my couch in pajamas, feeling strangely calm. It was over. All of it. The accusations, the gaslighting, the terrible secret, my marriage. Everything had exploded in one spectacular moment of truth, and now there was nothing left but debris. And somehow I was okay with that. Better to have nothing than to have a marriage built on lies and betrayal. The divorce proceedings started the following week. Trevor hired a lawyer, I hired a lawyer, and we began the process of legally ending what had already emotionally ended months ago. He was generous in the settlement, giving me the car, outright agreeing to an equal split of our savings, not fighting me on anything. I think he felt guilty, even though none of this had ultimately been his fault. He'd been manipulated just as much as I had groomed by his own family to doubt his wife. But the damage was done, the trust broken beyond repair. I moved into a small apartment in downtown Austin, a one-bedroom place with hardwood floors and big windows. It was mine. Just mine, no shared space haunted by ghosts of better times. Jessica helped me move along with a few other friends who'd been supportive through everything. They'd heard the story or versions of it, the gossip spreading like wildfire through our social circles. A few people distanced themselves, uncomfortable with the scandal by association. But most were supportive, horrified by what Diane and Aaron had done, disgusted by their willingness to sacrifice me to protect their secret. The video had escaped into the wild, of course. Someone at the party had recorded my laptop screen with their phone, and it had made its way to social media before Diane could do anything to stop it. Within days, it had spread through the local community, shared and reshared until everyone knew. Diane's book club dropped her. Her charity committees asked her to resign. Neighbors who'd been friendly for years stopped speaking to her. Martha told Trevor that Diane had become a recluse, too ashamed to show her face anywhere. Aaron lost his job at the construction company. His boss called him into the office 2 days after the party, and told him they couldn't employ someone with that kind of moral character, that clients would be uncomfortable having him on their properties. Without income, without prospects, without anyone willing to hire him once they heard the story, Aaron ended up moving away. I heard through Trevor that he'd gone to Nevada, was trying to start over somewhere no one knew his name. Trevor called me about a month after the party. His voice on the phone was hollow, exhausted. They left, he said. Mom and Aaron packed up and moved to Nevada together. They're still, he couldn't finish the sentence. Still together, I finished for him. He made a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. Yeah, still together. After everything, after being exposed, after losing everything, they're still choosing each other. It's sick. I didn't know what to say to that. Part of me had hoped that the exposure would shock them into ending their relationship, would make them see how wrong it was. But some people are too far gone to save. The divorce was finalized 3 months after that birthday party. Trevor and I met at the courthouse, signed the papers in front of a bored clerk, and walked out of the building as 2 separate people. He looked at me before getting into his car. I'm sorry, he said. For all of it. For not believing you. For my family. For everything. I'm sorry too, I replied. And I was. Sorry that his family had turned out to be monsters. Sorry that our marriage had become collateral damage in their twisted cover-up. Sorry that we'd both lost so much. But I wasn't sorry for exposing the truth. That I'd never apologize for. I threw myself into work after the divorce, taking on extra projects, staying late at the office. My boss was understanding about everything, had given me time off when I needed it, and now rewarded my dedication with a promotion to senior accountant. The raise helped pay for therapy, which I desperately needed. Processing everything that had happened. Learning to trust again, working through the trauma of being gaslit and accused and dragged through hell for something I hadn't done. My therapist was patient, helping me see that none of it had been my fault, that I'd been a victim of a deeply dysfunctional family's desperate attempt to hide their dysfunction. Jessica remained a constant in my life, checking in regularly, making sure I wasn't isolating myself. We started a routine of weekend brunch at a cafe near my apartment, sitting in the sunshine, eating waffles, and talking about everything and nothing. I joined a gym, started yoga classes, bought a cat from a local shelter. A gray tabby I named Jasper, who curled up on my lap in the evenings and purred while I watched TV. Small steps toward building a new life, a better life, one not defined by someone else's lies. I dated a little, nothing serious. A few coffee dates. One dinner that went nowhere. A brief 2-month thing with a guy from my gym that fizzled out amicably. I wasn't ready for anything serious, wasn't sure I'd ever be ready again. But my therapist encouraged me to stay open, to not let Trevor's family's toxicity close me off completely. So I tried. Went on dates when asked. Smiled and made small talk. Kept my heart carefully guarded, but left the door cracked just a little. About 6 months after the divorce, I ran into Martha at a grocery store. She looked older, tired, like the weight of her sister's scandal had aged her. She saw me and paused, her cart blocking the aisle. I wasn't sure if she'd speak to me or just walk away, but after a moment she approached. I wanted to say she started, then stopped. Took a breath. I wanted to say thank you. For exposing it. I know that sounds strange, but we all deserve to know the truth. I'd suspected something was off for years, the way Diane and Aaron were together, but I never imagined she trailed off, shaking her head. We talked for a few minutes, standing there in the produce section. She told me that Diane had cut off all contact with the family, that she and Aaron were living somewhere in Nevada, under assumed names, trying to escape their past. Trevor had moved too, she said. To Colorado. Got a fresh start with a new real estate firm. He was doing okay considering. I thanked her for the update and we parted ways. I felt a strange sense of closure, knowing that everyone involved was trying to move forward in whatever way they could. I started painting in my free time, something I'd loved as a kid, but had abandoned in adulthood. Set up a small easel in the corner of my living room and spent hours working with acrylics, creating abstract pieces that helped me process emotions I couldn't put into words. Bright angry reds bleeding into cool blues, chaotic brushstrokes gradually finding order. My therapist said it was a healthy outlet, a way of taking control of a narrative that had been forced on me. I found it meditative, soothing a way to quiet the thoughts that still sometimes spiraled in the dark hours of the night. A year after everything exploded, I felt like I could finally breathe again. The weight that had been sitting on my chest, the constant anxiety and hurt and betrayal, had lifted. I'd survived one of the worst experiences a person could go through, been falsely accused by the person who'd promised to love me, exposed to horrors I'd never imagined existed. And I'd come out the other side, stronger, clearer, more certain of my own worth. I didn't need Trevor or anyone else to validate me. I was enough on my own. Now, at 30 years old, my life looks nothing like I'd imagined it would. I'm single, living alone, no immediate plans for marriage or family. But I'm happy. Really genuinely happy in a way. I never was during those last months with Trevor. My apartment feels like home. My job is fulfilling and pays well. My friendships are strong and supportive. I have hobbies, interests, a life that belongs entirely to me. No one questioning my whereabouts or accusing me of betrayals I didn't commit. No toxic in-laws manipulating situations to cover their sick secrets. Just peace, quiet, and the freedom to be exactly who I am. That experience with Trevor's family taught me the most painful but necessary lessons about trust, about family, about the masks people wear to hide their true selves. When Trevor was so quick to believe I'd cheated based on nothing but a belt, he showed me that our foundation was weaker than I'd thought. A real partnership, a real marriage requires trust that goes deeper than circumstantial evidence. It requires believing in your partner even when things look bad, giving them the benefit of the doubt, choosing to communicate instead of accuse. We didn't have that, and looking back, I'm not sure we ever did. The thing about projection is that it reveals more about the accuser than the accused. Trevor's family was so desperate to hide their incestuous relationship that they were willing to destroy my marriage, to paint me as unfaithful, to make me the villain in their twisted story. They assumed I was capable of betrayal because they were betraying everything: family bonds, social norms, basic human decency. When someone accuses you without evidence, without reason, without willingness to hear your side, ask yourself what they might be hiding. Often the loudest accusations come from the guiltiest consciences. I don't regret exposing them at that party, even though some people thought I went too far. They'd tried to expose me. First tried to humiliate me in front of Trevor and his family. Tried to brand me an adulteress, to cover their actual adultery. All I did was defend myself with the truth. Yes, it was shocking. Yes, it destroyed relationships and reputations. But their secret had already destroyed things. It had destroyed Trevor's ability to trust. It had destroyed the sanctity of family. It had destroyed my marriage. I just made the destruction visible instead of letting it continue in the shadows. Walking away from that marriage was the best decision I ever made. Some people asked why I didn't try to work it out with Trevor after the truth came out, after he apologized. But an apology doesn't undo the damage of not being believed. It doesn't erase the feeling of being accused, judged, and condemned by the person who'd vowed to stand by you. Trevor chose to believe a belt over 4 years of faithful marriage. He chose to listen to his family's poisonous whispers instead of talking to me directly. Those choices revealed something fundamental about our relationship, something that couldn't be fixed with "I'm sorry." I learned that setting boundaries isn't cruel, it's essential. After everything came out, I could have maintained some connection with Trevor, could have been friendly for the sake of shared history. But I chose a clean break instead. Changed my number, blocked him on social media, asked mutual friends not to share information about me with him. It wasn't because I hated him. It was because I needed to protect myself, needed space to heal without constant reminders of what I'd been through. Boundaries are how we preserve ourselves, how we communicate that our well-being matters more than other people's comfort. The belt that started everything sits in a box in my closet now, along with my wedding photos and other artifacts from a life I no longer live. I kept it as a reminder, not of betrayal, but of resilience. That belt represented the moment my life fell apart, and the moment I discovered I was strong enough to survive it. Every time I see it, I remember that I didn't let them make me the villain. I didn't accept their false narrative. I fought back with truth, painful as it was, and I won my freedom. If you're in a relationship where you're constantly defending yourself, where your partner doesn't trust you without reason, where accusations come before conversations pay attention, that's not love. That's control. And sometimes, as in my case, it's projection. Someone who's hiding something is often desperate to make you look guilty to deflect attention from their own behavior. Don't let anyone gaslight you into believing you're the problem when you're actually just the scapegoat. The hardest thing I had to learn was that exposure of truth, even ugly truth, is not the same as cruelty. People who do terrible things often frame those who expose them as vindictive or cruel as going too far. But silence protects abusers and wrongdoers. Speaking up, bringing things into the light, is how we stop cycles of manipulation and abuse. Diane and Aaron wanted to continue their relationship in secret, wanted to sacrifice my reputation to maintain their facade. By exposing them, I didn't just defend myself. I freed Trevor from being an unwitting accomplice to their deception. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is tell a truth that hurts. I heard through the grapevine that Diane and Aaron split up about a year after moving to Nevada. Whatever twisted bond had held them together couldn't survive being exposed, being known. They'd thrived in secrecy in the forbidden nature of their relationship, but once it was out in the open, once they had to face what they'd done without the veil of mystery, it apparently fell apart. Aaron moved to California. Diane stayed in Nevada, living alone, cut off from most of her family. The consequences of their actions finally caught up with them, as consequences always do. Trevor found someone new, according to Martha. A woman in Colorado who knows nothing about his past, about his family's scandal. I hope he's honest with her. I hope he's learned to trust before accusing, to communicate before condemning. I hope he's building something healthier than what we had. I bear him no ill will. He was a victim too manipulated by people who should have protected him, used as a pawn in their game of deception. We were both casualties of his family's dysfunction, and we both deserved better. That belt in my car led me to discover something horrific, something that shattered my understanding of normal family dynamics. But it also led me to freedom. Freedom from a marriage that was built on shaky ground. Freedom from a family that was rotten at its core. Freedom to build a life on my own terms, surrounded by people who actually love and respect me. Sometimes the worst things that happen to us are doorways to better things. Sometimes we have to walk through fire to find peace on the other side. So here I am, 30 years old, single, independent, and genuinely at peace. I have my little apartment with the big windows. I have Jasper, who's currently asleep on the back of my couch as I write this. I have friends who've proven their loyalty through the hardest time of my life. I have a job I'm good at, hobbies that fulfill me, a future that's entirely mine to shape. The life I have now is smaller than the one I'd planned with Trevor, but it's authentic in a way that marriage never was. An authenticity I've learned is worth more than any facade of perfection. Have you ever been falsely accused of something you didn't do? Have you ever discovered that someone you trusted was hiding something terrible? How did you handle it? Did you expose the truth publicly or deal with it privately? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. What would you have done in my situation? Would you have shown that video at the party, or would you have handled it differently? Drop your perspective down below. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever felt gaslit or accused or betrayed, please hit that like button. Subscribe to this channel for more stories about finding strength in impossible situations, about standing up for yourself when everyone else is tearing you down. Share this video with anyone who might need to hear that it's okay to defend yourself, that exposing truth isn't the same as being cruel, that walking away from toxicity is an act of self-love, not selfishness. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being here, for hearing me, for understanding that sometimes the right thing to do is also the hardest thing. I hope my experience helps someone out there who's going through something similar, who's being accused or manipulated or made to feel crazy. You're not crazy. Your feelings are valid. Your truth matters. And you have every right to defend yourself, to protect yourself, to walk away from people who hurt you, even if those people are family. Take care of yourselves. Set your boundaries. Trust your instincts. And never let anyone make you doubt your own truth. You deserve better than false accusations and hidden betrayals. You deserve relationships built on trust and honesty and respect. Don't settle for anything less. Life is too short to spend it defending yourself to people who've already decided you're guilty. Stay strong, stay true, and remember that sometimes the person accusing you the loudest is the one hiding the most.